All right, so the first theory that we're going to go over is Margaret Maller's separation individuation theory of child development. So, a thing to kind of remember here is this is when the child begins to become its own individual within its life. So, successful completion of the developmental stages within the first few years gets our concepts of separation and then individuation. So separation in these terms are like the internal process, cognitive and mental growth away from their caregiver and or mother. And I always put slash caregiver because we do not want to assume that everyone has a mother or biological mother. And sometimes we have like different roles within that. So I'll always put caregiver in here, but for all due purposes, if we're going to follow Maller's per written, it's mother. But yes, so separation, just think of separation as them separating themselves and getting some independence from their caregiver. And then individuation, think about individual. They are becoming an individual person and starting to be unique beyond the people that are around them. So if done correctly, we're going to have a kid that thinks on their own and does kind of on their own and doesn't let other people dictate their type of behavior. But these people in this theory, or these kids, max out at 36 months or 3 years. So this isn't like we're having adulthood type theory here. And with that, the first stage is normal autistic stage. And this is 0 to 1 month. Like I said, this is a young theory. So ages are kind of a little wonky here. But the infant is primarily focused on himself or herself. So some egocentrism, meaning everything is about them. But when you're 0 to 1, you don't really have a sense of identity anyhow. They're uninterested on the things around them. Their main facet here is survival. So the mother is viewed as an intrinsic or natural existing part of the infant and devoid, or there's not a lot of separation within them. So their identity is them, their mom is them, and they're their mom. Because a lot of this time is just feeding and sleeping and surviving. So the primary goal here is to create a state of equilibrium while getting their needs met. Meaning, I just got on this earth. I'm trying to figure this thing out. I need to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Am I going to get my needs met? Am I not going to get my needs met? If I coo this way, am I going to get fed? If I coo this way, am I going to get fed? Type deal. So this is them just trying to gain some type of identity about themselves. But an easy way to remember this is think of the autism spectrum disorder, meaning most times they're just in their own world and they don't really want a whole lot of social context about or around them. So not a lot of stimulation. And same thing here. So you can utilize like autism or autistic stage to stem those two together of yes, they're about themselves and they don't want external stimuli, and too much of it could cause some type of disturbance. So then stage number 2, normal symbiotic phase. And this is 1 to 5 months. And this is like the need satisfaction relationship type thing here. Everything is about getting their needs met. So within this, you can only imagine that babies begin to learn about their world and develop their human bond with a caregiver and mother. However, it's all around survival needs. I only am associating with you because you're satisfying my needs and I'm surviving. Of course, think again, they're 1 to 5 months. So this thought pattern is not the same. They're not like, oh yeah, I need to be in this relationship to survive. It's like, no, this is just what I know and I'm going to continue doing it. Let's not reinvent the wheel. So positive stimuli or positive stimulus, such as like cuddling, smiling, and engaged attention or relief of discomfort, as well as them getting their needs met. So when you think about it, when a baby gets fed, when they're hungry, they tend to react positively or do the same behavior so that way they can continue to get their feeding needs met. However, if they don't get their needs met, they'll adapt to their environment as well. So Adler clumps it into like positive stimuli, relief of discomfort, and trust. So if all of those things exist, they'll start trusting people. If those things are absent, they'll have mistrust towards people and adapt to their environment accordingly. So if they're able to rely on other people, they will gain a sense of confidence about themselves and with their environment. And when the needs are unmet, they have some instability or anxiety around being around people, such as, oh, wow, this person's not going to stay with me, so I'm not going to engage in the relationship in general. So the crucial part to success in this is the availability as well as ability to connect with the mother slash caregiver to adapt to the infant's needs. So not just the infant not reaching out, but if the caregiver or mother is not able to take care of the baby's needs adequately, the connection could still be like devoid or like not possible. So it's important to remember that not all perceived neglect, quote unquote, is actual neglect. So let's say we have a family that adopted a young child and they don't really know how to satisfy all the kids' needs. They're trying their best, but it would also be deemed as like developmental neglect type deal. So stage 3, separation individuation, which is again the name of theory. So don't get tripped up on the overarching name. And then this stage. And it's the biggest span of time within this. So it's the 5 months all the way to 36 months. And for that reason, it's broken up into 4 sub parts. So during this separation, remember, trying to get its own kind of cognitive as well as mental independence from them. And they get boundaries for themselves and what they like and what they don't like. They'll separate from their caregiver and have some like comfort within that and not freak out. However, during this phase, they also develop an understanding of that when something's away from them, they often don't have to struggle with it. And with that, they will also begin to test the waters, whether they can get their needs met when people are around and when they're not around. So as they progress older, if done correctly, they'll be able to, 1, strive on their own, 2, depend on their caregiver slash mother, as well as know that the resources and available services are there when they need it. So the first one, individuation and hatching, is the 5 to 9 months. And the way that I tell people to remember this is think of baby turtles hatching out of their eggs. They go right to the ocean, but they stay close to their mother. So if you think about it, in this stage, they're starting to get a little different from their caregiver mother, but they keep them very close by. So this stage is where they have a lot of interest in the outside world, yet they keep their caregiver slash mother in eyesight. So they may roam away, but they're always able to say, yep, there's my mom. There's my caregiver. Yep, there they are. All right. Oh, they went away. They freak out. So they become more interested in exploring who their caregiver slash mother is, such as like smell and what they look like. They're actually able to point and say, mama, or like dada, or auntie, or whichever caregiver is stepping in. And then the consistent access to the caregiver slash mother helps them gain a sense of security as well as exploration. So when they do roam away, they're like, oh yeah, when I come back here, they'll be here for me, rather than I roam off. I may not have the caregiver, so I need to always stay by their side, which is where we get some maladaptive type thought process. So the way to remember this is think that they're starting to break out of their shell and get some independence, but ultimately they have to fly back into the nest like a little baby bird. And then the next part of this, 3B, is practicing. And the way I think of this is when you want to get good at a skill, you keep doing things over and over, but someone is providing guidance to you. So for example, you could all, like someone tonight was like, oh, you're our professor. So me providing guidance and feedback based on your guys' analysis and ability to read the questions, ability to analyze the information that I share is my way of indirectly having you guys practice. Like what you guys do with the information as well as analysis is all based on you, but you guys will ultimately come back and say, is this correct? So if you can imagine, that's what's happening in this phase. So like a child's ability to explore enhances, meaning they'll roam off a little bit further, but ultimately they'll come back and say, did I do this correctly? Is this right? Oh my God, look what I did. Like this is this cool little project that I did. And then they'll roam back out and then they'll come back in and say, hey, look at this, look at this. The child is playing on their own, but again, just like in the previous stage, they might not be in eyesight, but they know that their parent / caregivers around, meaning, okay, I'm gonna go play with my friends over here on this park, but I need to make sure that my parents are around, so that way if anything wild happens, I can feel secure and have something to fall back on. And then the child's experience of the world is influenced by the mother's reaction or the caregiver's reaction, such as mom / caregiver super amped up and worried. I'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. The kid's going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I don't know what I'm stunned about, but everyone else is uproared. So I'm going to be uproared or anxious or just like isolate. Or if everyone else is super excited, like if you've ever seen a baby, they're like, oh wow, I'm excited too. Woo! But they don't even know what they're excited for. So they take on whatever their parent / caregiver is. And you often see this in children, pets even, could be like mirrored in this as well. However, if there is some pain and they're not being able to get soothed or get their needs met, they will ultimately then go to ulterior sources to get their needs met or just develop a maladaptive way of dealing with negative stimuli as well as positive. If someone didn't have anything that they can celebrate with, when they grow up, they're not going to be able to celebrate or take credit for what they actually do. The third subcomponent of the separation individuation, so 3C, is rapprochement. So the way that I have people remember this is like they will have periods of freedom, yet will always reproach for assistance, meaning they take it a little step further from the practicing and they actually roam off on their own and come back. Or at times when the mom or caregiver's like, hey, come here, they push them away and like, get away from me. But at times they're like, oh my God, please hold me. So they're like in such conflict with themselves that there's not a whole lot of consistency because it's like, I want to be independent, but I'm also dependent. So what do I do? So this is where the child desires to have independence, but it's marred or like influenced by fear of abandonment, meaning, oh my God, if I roam off on my own and do my own thing, will people ultimately be there to support me? So the child will have opposing desires and needs depending on the situation, meaning at times the child refuses to be around their caregiver or mother. And then the next minute they'll be like, soothe me, please. No, you're ignoring me type deal. Super needy and super hard to like do as such. However, rapprochement, a lot of what they do is socialization. So another thing to remember is like you're approaching a lot of social situations and people and identifying your identity from there, such as imitating others. You see this all the time. Person starts hanging out with someone new, they start using the lingo that they're using, they start doing the wonky actions that they do without even knowing why. And then when they return to a different environment, they go back to that environment like a chameleon, or they do their own thing, depending on what the situation is, such as the way that I conduct myself in this KSA study group is different than I would conduct myself, say, at the University of Michigan. Why? I'm more comfortable in this KSA study group. University of Michigan, you have 30 people you don't know, as well as there's a lot more like stigma and influence around me. So I have to put on a different persona, but ultimately the teaching style is the same. But we adapt to our environments based on what's going on in the situation. You always reproach situations differently. Oh, that's weird. It's called approachment. As well as like the desire to have others may even force you to like steal, meaning you have a nice watch. I like that watch. I might just come up and gank it from you. Or, wow, I see you're on your cell phone. I want to watch YouTube. So I just come up, steal your phone, run off. So they learn that their emotional needs are not like auto-sensed, meaning when young children cry or like coo and stuff, like parents are like super sensitive to that. However, once they get to the toddler age or like 1, 2 years old, parents aren't as like sensitive to it. They're like, oh yeah, you're grown. Oh, you're walking. That's fine, type deal. So they have to find different ways to get their needs met, which is where you get quote unquote terrible twos. You might have people ripping tantrums or like temper tantrums, sorry, or like just randomly arguing or like, no, I don't want to go. And then it's like, oh, I thought you wanted to go. And they're like, I'm totally going. So it's very flippant and like super inconsistent, like very young age hormonal type behavior. And then, which leads us into the last part of the theory, object constants, and that is from the ages of 24 months to 36 months. And if you think about it, object and constant, this is where a child knows that an object will be there even when it leaves. So the child tends to be more comfortable with separating from their caregiver / mother, knowing that whenever they leave, they will return. Or they begin to view others as separate individuals, and even when they aren't together, they exist, meaning friendships can start to develop as well as like peer influenced type groups. So any questions about separation individuation at all? And if you don't, just type no into the chat.
I have a question, but
Yes,
is
ma'am.
object constancy similar to
Object permanence?
yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Just different theories.
Right, right.
Trust me, it's tricky when you have cross theories, but yes, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
It's just one theorist was like, hey, let me steal that theory or the concept, and then they make it their own. It's like off brand, I guess, but they're both name brand, which makes it difficult. Any other questions? Good question, though, Nicole. I appreciate that. Can you show age group for differentiation in approachment? Yes. So approachment 16 to 24 and 5 to 9 months. Is differentiation is 5 to 9. Approachment 16 to 24. You're welcome. Any other questions before I cook on? And then this is where I'm going to have to start typing. So this is where we may get some nuggets. Not that we didn't before, but open flowed mind is the best, in my opinion. But I also don't like structure, which we've discussed prior. Okay, so if there's no questions, let's get down to the next theory. So socio-cultural theory, and this is by Lev Vygotsky. Vasky, something along that. Beep. And his theory was all about the role play of like community and influence. So the main basis behind it is that community plays a central role in the process of making meaning, such as like when someone reacts to a death by crying, it encourages the show of emotion when negative events happen. And then inversely, when someone does not react to a death and demeans crying, then it promotes the lack of emotion in negative situations. So we see this all the time. We see this where people's cultural and environment dictate what happens. So within this, we have to emphasize that children are born. Actually, back the truck up. So an emphasis on cultural beliefs and attitudes impact how instruction and learning takes place. So kind of what I said, but I don't want to leave anything unsaid because you guys aren't in my mind. So when this recording happens, you aren't like, well, why did he skip something? But so children are born with basic biological restraints on their minds. So an example of this is preset functions a child's culture provides what is referred to as tools of intellectual adaptation. And what does this look like? So these are basically the tools that allow for bless, dang it, I tried muting my mic. Tools that children to utilize. Wow. Their basic mental abilities, meaning what is someone's preset way of doing things, and is it adaptive or could like set in stone? So most people will adapt to cultures they live in. So in the previous theory, like when I was talking about lecturing at the university and how I had to mold to some type of situations, that's what we're kind of looking at here. So the environment that someone is in will influence how they think and what they think about. So example here is a culture emphasis on working for everything by yourself will promote that you should never ask for help, and someone will become anxious or overwhelmed when they feel like they need to ask for assistance. So we see this a lot. Like, wow, I totally could have used that help before. Well, why didn't you ask? I don't know. You know exactly why. Because it's preset. So like with what you know is what you do. So what you've experienced or what you've witnessed dictates what you do. So a culture, another example, a culture places emphasis on being on time for appointments. A person will play it out and may not understand when others are late. So for study group today, somebody that was like super structured might be like, well, that was super disrespectful. This guy's a fool. I don't even know why we signed up. He doesn't even care about us. he's super late, must be not be knowledgeable, he's a fool, he's an idiot type thing. And if that's the case, you probably didn't get selected for the group. That's why I was like, oh, it's not a big deal. Everyone will understand and hear what happened, and we'll be okay with it. So, but with that, like what people have experienced or what they've witnessed, they can change how they adapt themselves. So, depending on your environment, dictates what you'll actually be able to do. So, Bukowski proposes that much of learning for children take place through social interaction with a skillful tutor. Interesting. You guys played out the theory as well. No, I'm just kidding. So the tutor may model behaviors, and or provide verbal instruction. The child seeks to understand the actions or instruction provided by the tutor. So this is often a parent or teacher. Then internalize / interpret the information using it to guide and regulate their own behavior. So an example here, a child is struggling to tie their shoes, and a parent comes over and shows them how and uses a rhyme. So I don't know how you guys tied your little shoes, but Phil's little shoes had a little bit of a rhyme to them. So bunny ears, playing by a tree, Chris crossed the tree and trying to catch me. And then it plays again. Bunny ears, jumped into the hole, popped out the hole, beautiful and bold. Less wordy one would be like whoop, swoop, and pull. Whoop, swoop, pull. So with that, like you teaching kids different little mnemonics and tricks, such as savvy farmer lied and raises expensive apples from India to remember safety, assess, refer, educate, advocate, facilitate, intervene, will get you a little further than just trying to remember the concepts. So another one that's not related to shoes. So we have a young girl who is completing a jigsaw puzzle alone. She performs poorly. Oh, I feel you, girl. I'm not good. And is struggling. The parent then sits with her to demonstrate some strategies to put together a puzzle, such as finding edge pieces / corner pieces. The parent provides the preset methods and the child adapts their way of doing things when putting together a puzzle. So we have different ways of looking at it. However, there are two main concepts when looking at this theory of learning. So there's two main principles of the theory. So first one, let's follow. Get back over there. Boom. One, more knowledgeable, other, or MKO. So what does this mean? Oops. So this refers to someone who has a better understanding or higher ability level than the learners with respect to a particular process or concept. So what does this look like? So some of you probably are really, really good at time management, and I could take some advice from you. Some people are really, really good at taking this exam and could take advice from those people. However, if guidance is not provided, then there's no progress that is made within that. So if anyone showed me time management and I showed you guys test taking, we would be going to the more knowledgeable other, meaning if they have more knowledge than you, it's easier for you to learn. And then more semantical examples, so parent teaching child to tie shoes. Parent helping child learn puzzles. Child helping parent with working their cell phone. Phil helping people learn how to take the ASWB exam. So that is where someone has a little more knowledge than the other person, and that person is benefiting from that knowledge. And then the other one is zone of proximal development. So what does this look like? So this involves two elements. First one, actual development. So what is the actual development? So this is the upper limit of tasks that a child can perform individually. And then level of potential development. And what does that look like? This is the upper limit of tasks a child can perform with the assistance of a more competent individual. So a lot of people have baselines, other people do not, meaning they need guidance to create said baseline. So with that, it involves a lot of different tricky things. So the key thing to keep in mind is that it includes all of the knowledge and skills that a person cannot yet understand or perform on their own yet, but it is capable with guidance. And this goes under their level of potential development. So it's not that they're incapable, they just need some guidance, such as everyone in this room right now can pass the exam easily. I would put money on it. However, some people just need a little more guidance than the others. Doesn't mean that they're incapable. It's just the way that it's explained to them just wasn't in a form that made sense to them. So they just needed to adapt the way that they're doing things to fit a way that makes sense to them and works for them. So with that, as a child is allowed to stretch their skills and knowledge, often through observation or direct input, they are able to progress, rely, and extend their proximal development. In less fancier terms, the more someone is exposed and becomes competent, the more they can advance their skill in the given art. Meaning, the more you guys practice breaking down questions and developing questions, the easier it becomes when it comes to test taking. And then a concept to bring it all together is scaffolding. So what is this? And this is when a child is in the zone of proximal development, and someone is providing them with the appropriate assistance or tools, scaffolding, that will give them the information that will give them the needed push to complete a given task, such as said in another way, when someone is given the missing information, resources, or competence that will help them propel past a given goal slash action. Meaning, we do scaffolding when all of you pass your exam. So example, Phil provides assistance, scaffolding, and over time, the person is able to break down questions and answer them correctly without the guidance from Phil anymore. Meaning, when someone gets exposure, they outgrow the assistance. Therefore, it is not needed any longer. Another example, training wheels or bumpers for bowling. Each provide assistance and support to achieve or equalize a task, but over time they are no longer needed. So any questions on that theory before I get into the conditionings? And if you don't have any, just type no. Okay, so then we get into good old classical conditioning, and then we'll do operant after. So classical, good old Pavlov and his good old salivating dogs. He's what brings all the dogs to the yard. So a learning process that occurs through associations between an environment and a natural occurring stimulus. So it involves placing a neutral stimulus before a natural occurring reflex. And it might be easier if I say signal here. So a neutral signal before a natural occurring reflex. So for example, we'll use Pavlov's example directly. So the bell is a neutral signal, and salivating is a natural occurring reflex. So you wanted to do it where you ring it, you get revved. So by connecting the two with external stimulus, so presenting food, the neutral signal could produce a natural occurring reflux, which is, again, salivating. So the basis of this, we bring something external into the situation to make a neutral signal linked with a natural occurring reflux. So super basic at this given moment, but as we get into it, it'll get more complex. So there are 3 phases of classical conditioning. Phase 1, before conditioning. So what happens here? It requires a naturally occurring stimulus that will automatically elicit a response. Example, salivating in response to food. Whoops. Stomach. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, sorry guys. I don't know if you saw that, but someone just passed their exam. That's how it's done. But nonetheless, get focused again. Stomach virus produces feelings of nausea. Example, perfume could create a response of happiness. So all of those just naturally occurring things. Someone passing their exam, Phil fist pumps and smiles. Someone passes their exam, Phil feels happy. So this is where it gets kind of tricky, where an unconditioned response / stimulus produces an unconditioned response. So with this, it also involves another stimulus in which has no effect on a person when it is presented. This is called a neutral stimulus. Example, person, place, thing, meaning study group. The word study group meant nothing until you started attending my study group. Because why? You didn't really have any basis of a study group unless you had prior experiences within study groups, which it then in itself produced meaning. So neutral stimulus does not produce a response until it is paired with the unconditioned stimulus. Without the unconditioned stimulus, the person, place, or thing, such as neutral stimulus, does not hold any meaning. So with that, we have to broach the two components of before conditioning. So what are these, you may be wondering? The unconditioned stimulus and the unconditioned response. So unconditioned stimulus, which is unconditionally, naturally, and automatically triggers a response. You might be like, Phil, that's a super blanket term. How about you provide an example? Good idea. So within this, someone smells one of their favorite foods and it causes them to feel hungry. Example. So I guess I could elaborate on that a little more. So it makes you feel hungry. So the smell of the food is an unconditioned stimulus. When it is present, it provokes a response. Another example, you see a picture of Santa Claus and get excited for Christmas. Santa is the unconditioned, well, it's the unconditioned stimulus. A third example, you see the letters and think of Phil. The acronym is an unconditioned stimulus. Or as Kim was saying prior, Phil, where in the heck's your coffee? The coffee is the unconditioned stimulus. It makes you think of me, or you symbolize that with my existence. And then, which leads us into the second concept, which is the unconditioned response. And what is that? The unlearned response that occurs naturally in response to the unconditioned stimulus. So what does that look like? So in the previous examples, the feeling of hunger in response to the smell of your favorite food. The sensation of hunger was not there until provoked by the food, aka remember, unconditioned stimulus. It stimulated a response within that. And then we'll go back. So the excitement for Christmas in response to seeing Santa Claus. Without the image of Santa Claus, you did not have excitement for Christmas. Third example. The thought of Bill when you saw the acronym. Prior to seeing the acronym, you were not thinking of Phil. Well, maybe, but for all semanticals, we'll just say you weren't. Maybe some people were. Which if you were, I appreciate it. However, for this, you were not. So phase 2, this is during conditioning. So what's happening here? So the previously neutral stimulus, or something that doesn't provoke a response, is repeatedly paired with the unconditioned stimulus. So as a result of this pairing, an association of where they're linked together between the previously paired, the previously separate entities become paired, and an unconditioned, a conditioned stimulus is formed. So neutral stimulus with an unconditioned stimulus forms a conditioned stimulus. Thus, the neutral stimulus becomes the conditioned stimulus. So within this, an example would be, suppose when you smelled your favorite food, you heard the sound of a whistle. So although the whistle is unrelated to your favorite food, when repeatedly paired, the whistle would eventually trigger the thought of your favorite food. Second example, suppose every time you saw Santa Claus, he was drinking a Coca-Cola with repeated exposure, you would begin to relate Coca-Cola with Christmas, which has been done. Most Coca-Cola ads around Christmas time have Santa Claus in them. So they've kind of almost conditioned you to be like, these two are similar. So, in another example, suppose every time you applied the acronym to a practice question, you felt more confident. When you feel confident during test taking, you will apply the acronym. Why? Because in practice, it made you feel more confident. So when you feel confident, you'll utilize it more. So you begin to associate your confidence with that. So then we step into phase 3, which is after conditioning. So this is when the association has been made between the unconditioned stimulus and the conditioned stimulus, presenting the conditioned stimulus alone will evoke a response even without the unconditioned stimulus, such as whenever you're not confident, the acronym remains. Whenever Santa is gone, you still associate Christmas with Coca-Cola. So, which causes the formation of a conditioned response. So, what is a conditioned response? That is learned response to the previously neutral stimulus. So, example, feeling hungry at the sound of a whistle. Example, you would think of Christmas whenever you saw a Coca-Cola. Whenever you saw the acronym, you would be confident. So with that, we have 5 principles of classical conditioning. So first one, acquisition, which is, think of it as acquire a seat, meaning this is the first stage of learning when a response is first established and strengthened, meaning you just start to get a little mix of it. So a neutral stimulus is repeatedly paired with an unconditioned response, So after an association is made between the two, the subject will begin to omit a behavior in response to the previous neutral stimulus or conditioned stimulus. And with that, a couple of examples. So when the whistle is coupled with the smell of the favorite food, when the when the Coca-Cola is coupled with Santa, when the acronym is coupled with confidence. So the response is said to be acquired. So acquisition meaning we acquire a different thing than we are used to. Second one, extinction. So what is this? The repetitions of conditioning fading. So when an occurrence of a conditioned response decreases or disappears, meaning all the work that we've put into associate things together goes away. So this may happen if, let's say, you stop studying, you stop practicing, you stop being confident, you stop, etc., meaning when you stop doing something, you lose it. So when a conditioned stimulus is no longer with an unconditioned stimulus. So examples of this: whistle is no longer paired with food. Coca-Cola is no longer paired with Santa. Acronym is no longer paired with confidence. So with that, you just tend to lose with whatever association that you once had, meaning all of the work that you once put in is then expounded or gone. And then spontaneous recovery. Think of random return. Why? Because this is where all of the things that you've done come back, such as, let's say you fail the exam, don't study for a couple months, and then snap a finger, bam, I'm back in it, baby. I know everything that I once did. And no. So the reappearance of the conditioned response after a rest period or a period of decreased exposure slash response, meaning You do something less, but once you get back into it, you bounce back. So example, a person will hear a whistle and think of their favorite food even after the previous attempts of hearing the whistle did not provoke a response. Example, a person sees a Coca-Cola and thinks of Christmas after multiple exposures of Coca-Cola without a response. And then if an unconditioned stimulus and conditioned stimulus are no longer associated, extinction will happen more quickly after spontaneous recovery. We see this often in like trauma too. You think that you're better, you think the things that are going well, and then you get hopped into a situation that brings back all of the old stuff. But after some time, you bring yourself back down and then it's gone. And then stimulation generalization, apply to things in general categories, meaning we start to clump different things together. So this is the tendency for the conditioned stimulus to evoke similar responses after the response has been conditioned. So we respond to similar stimulus even when it is not the same as we were used to. Meaning, so example here would be someone may hear a different tone of whistle yet still make a connection to their favorite food. Or someone may see a Pepsi and associate it with Christmas when it is held by Santa. Meaning, regardless of what the drink is, looks similar, we might be like, oh yeah, that's totally the same thing. However, key thing to keep in mind here is that the greater difference between the original stimulus and the related stimulus, the weaker the conditioned response must be. They are clinging and associating So they're clinging a lot of things together without concrete evidence. So the more clear cut something is and the connection is, the easier it is for them to. So like, yeah, I'm not totally attracted to that anymore. So, and then stimulus, discrimination is when you're able to differentiate between different stimulus. So between a conditioned stimulus and other stimuli that have not been paired with unconditioned stimulus, meaning in the previous example, if something's different from something else, then you'd be able to discriminate or differentiate it. So someone will be able to tell the difference between two different bell tones and will only react to a specific tone that they associated with their favorite food. Meaning you could play many different tones, but it's not going to get them revved up like you get revved up when you hear certain particular things. So someone will be able to tell the difference between different beverages, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi, and only associate Coca-Cola with Christmas when the conditioned stimulus eta is present. So within that, you're able to look at it and say, no, that's totally different because this one object is missing. So any questions on classical conditioning before we get into operant? No. Okay. And I just put that out in the chat because I wasn't sure if those were old or new. Okay. So similar names, totally different styles though. One is involving dogs. One involves our favorite positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and all of those. So this method of learning that occurs through rewards and punishments for behavior. So like I said, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment. So an association is made between a behavior and a consequence of that behavior. So an example right off the rip, a rat presses a blue button and receives a food pellet as a reward, but when he presses the red button, he gets zapped. One will promote behavior and the other will diminish the likelihood of one. So within that, it involves any action that is followed by a reinforcement to strengthen and increase the likelihood of a behavior in the future. So that's the ideal, that you'd be able to do it. So, example, someone laughs at one of your jokes. So you are more likely to tell them more jokes in the future. Another example, you feel good after exercising, so you are more likely to exercise in the future. So more or less positive reinforcement there. So another concept, any actions that result in punishment or undesirable consequences will weaken and be less likely that someone repeats them in the future. So, example here, you tell someone a joke and they say that it was dumb. You are less likely to tell them in the future. Example, when you exercise, you do not like how it makes you feel, so are less likely to exercise in the future. So we have two types of behavior. So we have one, respondent behavior, which is actions that are automatically, well, they're automatic responses to a stimulus. Someone, well, does not have to learn these for them to occur. So automatically, involuntarily, occur. So example, getting hungry when you smell your favorite food. You think of Christmas when you see Santa. So they're kind of like taught behaviors, and then operant behaviors, which are behaviors that operate on the environment to produce rewarding or punishing stimuli. Wow. So will influence whether or not an action will be repeated in the future. So, example, ridicule / praise for a joke that you told. Good / bad feeling from working out. So those different examples and behaviors reinforce what we see, which then leads us into our types of reinforcers, which leads us to the most difficult part of this is how to differentiate them. So we kind of allude this into the last group, but positive reinforcements is any favorable or desirable stimuli that when presented after a behavior increases the likelihood of repeated behavior. So example, getting positive praise for a joke, getting money for completing homework, or getting answers correctly when practicing. So then we have negative reinforcement, which is removal of an unfavorable or undesirable stimuli after a behavior to increase the likelihood of a more positive outcome. So, example here, putting your seatbelt on stops the beeping sound in your car. Another example, if you had to pay every time you did, if you had to pay every time you didn't complete homework, you will complete the homework to avoid paying the money. So something undesirable. So the negatives here always are removing something such as privilege and or type of sanity. Another example here would be so when you do not study, you feel hella stressed and have decreased confidence. Therefore, you will study to avoid these negative feelings. So studying like takes those away. So then leads us into our types of punishment, which, believe it or not, positive punishment, negative punishment. So positive punishment here, remember, adding something into the situation, any unfavorable event or outcome in order to weaken the response. It follows. And some negative action into the situation. So, example here. Getting a speeding ticket for speeding. The introduction of the speeding ticket reduces the likelihood you will speed in the future. So spanking a child when they are misbehaving. Spanking, adding the spanking into the situation, reduce the likelihood of bad behavior in the future, which then leads us into the negative punishment when a favorable event or outcome is removed after behavior occurs. So, example here, taking a child's video game after misbehavior, removing the video game will increase the likelihood that they will have good behavior in the future. Another example, driving privileges are taken away for speeding. The loss of driving privileges okay, put the I there, will increase the likelihood of improved driving when the privileges are returned. Third one is a paycheck for violating work rules. The loss of paycheck will increase the likelihood that you follow the rules in the future. So with this, we always want to keep in mind what we're looking at. So positive equals adding to the situation, and negative equals taking away from the situation. So if you think about it, positive reinforcement is adding something good to the situation. Negative reinforcement is taking something undesirable away. Positive punishment is adding something undesirable to the situation, and negative punishment is taking away something favorable. So positive is adding to the situation, negative is taking away. And with that, we have reinforcement schedules, just in case that this pops up onto your exam now. So when and how behaviors were reinforced play a role in the speed and strength of the acquisition. Thus, the timing and frequency of the reinforcement influences how new behaviors are learned and how old behaviors can be modified. So what do they look like? One, continuous reinforcement. So continuous reinforcement is one, providing a reinforcement every time a response occurs. So learning tends to occur quickly, yet when the completion rate was slowed, an extinction occurred when the reward was stopped. Therefore, when the person is not being rewarded, they stop doing the behavior. Thus, you feel like what your process and things that you're doing aren't happening, you stop doing what is good for the process. So an example here, so getting candy after each correct answer someone will lose interest quickly when they are satisfied with the amount of candy they have. Thus, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So with that, falls us into the next one, which is fixed ratio schedule. And what does this look like? Behavior is reinforced only after a specific number of responses have occurred. So this is when we only have a little bit of time. So learning tends to occur quickly in response rates are quick, yet when the reward is obtained, the less motivated that they are. However, when the number of repetitions is too high, the motivation rate is decreased. So, if the amount of repetitions they have to do to get the reward is poor, that is where we run into some difficulties. And then the other one, fixed. So fixed interval schedule. And this is when behavior is reinforced after a certain amount of time or interval has passed. Remember, so response rate remains steady and will increase the closer someone gets to the reinforcement time. The person will slow after the reinforcement is obtained. So an example here. So someone going to get a paycheck is more grateful and motivated to complete a task. Yet, after they get paid, their motivation may decrease. So then That's wonky. All right, so 4 is variable, ratio, schedule. So within this, reinforcement is provided after a varied number of responses. So this is simply random disperse. So random dispersed rewards. So this one has a high response rate and low extinction. Someone does not know when they will get a reward, so they stay motivated throughout the action. Meaning, if you never knew when you got paid, you just had to keep working, chances of you actually doing it are going to drastically increase. So an example here, someone playing a slot machine, when a person gets paid, but there is no guarantee when they will, they stay motivated to play. Thus, suspense tends to keep people engaged. And then last one is variable interval schedule. And this is when providing reinforcement after a variable amount of time has elapsed, meaning someone who is self-employed becomes motivated when they are paid, yet when they are not receiving payment, they are unmotivated. Or another example, someone who enjoys fishing won't leave in the belief that they will catch a fish in time. So that is the reinforcement schedules as well as the conditioning. So any questions on any of that, or would you like to just go to the questions? And if you would like the questions, just type questions. And a key thing to keep in mind here okay, and something that I didn't put, partial reinforcements is reinforced only part of the time. Learned behavior equals slower, yet last longer. Okay, so I'm going to pause the recording real quick. One. Pow. Okay, so a social worker in a family agency is completing an intake with a family and their 10-month-year-old son, who's been running away from them to do devious acts, but always returns to them to tell on himself. The parents are not sure if this is normal and wanted to obtain more information regarding their son's behavior. Which stage of Maller's separation and individuation best explains the son's behavior? A. Normal autistic. B. Rapprochement. C. Practicing. D. Normal symbiotic. So, normal autistic, remember, is one of the very first, and this is 0 to 1 month. And the behavior is all based on survival and not really a whole lot of stimulation outside. So that would be incorrect there. Normal symbiotic, remember, is 1 to 5 months. And this is where it's all needs based and just getting relationships started. But then we get into rapprochement or practicing. So practicing is 10 to 16 months, with the person going off on their own, doing actions, but ultimately coming to their parent for soothing and reactions. And rapprochement is a little further down the road, which is 16 to 24 months. And this is where they have a struggle between whether they want to be around their parents or they don't want to be around their parent. Both have similar tendencies of going back to the parent for reinforcement when they feel needed. However, due to the age, as well as them willingly going back to the parent, it doesn't say anything about them resisting the attention of the parent due to their age and behavior. We're going to say practicing is the most appropriate behavior there. Any questions or concerns on that question? Okay. Question 2. A child sees that their mother is leaving the room, yet does not become anxious or cause a fuss like he did when he was younger. Which stage of Maller's separation and individuation best explains the child's behavior? A. Normal autistic. B. Normal symbiotic. C. Object constancy. Or D. And when you have your answer, type the word peace in the chat. Okay, so polls are open. Everyone was relatively quick with that one. So, but like I was explaining before, Maller's is pretty short theory, so it's hard to develop a whole lot of content and things with that, but we can roll with it. All right, and if you need more time, just type time in the chat. But if not, we can look and see where we're at. Whoops, 15 more seconds. Since almost every person has answered to this point. Okay. So everyone, well, not everyone. The majority think it's C, some think it's B, some think it's D. So let's look at her. So a child sees that their mother is leaving the room, yet does not become anxious and create a fuss. So key thing here, doesn't create a fuss like he did when he was younger. So used to do it, now he advanced on. Again, normal autistic is 0 to 1 month, and that's all based on no external stimuli. Normal symbiotic, all needs based, so that's not it. So then it begs the question, is it practicing or object constancy? Practicing, remember, is when the person needs to have their parents around for guidance as well as comfort. And object constancy is when an object is not around, they're able to keep in their mind that it stays constant and is something that is important to them. So the question here is saying object constancy. Any questions or anything like that about that one? Okay. So the next question, a social worker in an outpatient clinic is completing an intake assessment with an 18-year-old female who's been struggling with anxiety. The woman reports that she recently engaged in a relationship with a boy that wants to have sex with her and that she's nervous and she's never had sex. The woman reports that she would like to obtain information regarding sex and felt like another older female therapist would have the needed information. Which concept of social cultural theory best explains the woman's behavior? Zone of proximal development, scaffolding, more knowledgeable other, or support building? And when you have your answer, type love in the chat. Love in this club. And how's everyone's goals doing? How's everyone's New Year's goal? We're a month in. Stay motivated. Is anyone struggling with their current goals? New Year's going well. What's making it going well? Staying focused. Good. It is a difficult task to stay focused, but you all can and you all will. Sticking to my plans. Has anything made it difficult to stay on task? And the polls are open. There are always distractors, but figuring out how to get past them is often difficult. What is your biggest distractor at this moment? Okay. So it's all not enough hours in a day. Seriously though, can work in the other weeks. We're not bringing it home. So yeah, not bringing stress home from work is big indicator. It's a learned art, honestly. And if anyone tells you they haven't mastered, probably lying, especially in our field. It's very difficult not to. So majority think it's C, some think it's B, some think it's A. And I'll allude more onto that after I break down this question. So social worker in outpatient clinic, completing an intake with an 18-year-old female, struggling with anxiety. The woman reports that she's engaged in relationships with a person and they want to have sex, and that she's nervous because she's never had sex before. The woman reports that she feels like the therapist has the needed information and can show her how it's done. And socio-cultural theory. So keep that in mind. So zonal proximal development is overall threshold of what someone is capable of doing and what they can currently do. Scaffolding. So receiving assistance to help propel someone's progress in an area that they already can do. More knowledgeable other is when someone goes to someone with more experience than they have to get more info and guidance in a particular area. Support building. Phil made this up. So D is automatically out. So then based on the definitions, zonal proximal is just an overall arching theme of what someone's capable of doing versus what they can already do. So that would not be the correct answer because the woman's looking to supplement in some way, which begs the question, is she looking to get information and guidance, or is she looking to find a supplemental thing that can help guide her in a particular area? So with that, she's not really looking for anything beyond information, because if it was like direct exposure to the particular thing, might be kind of weird. So in this, she's utilizing the more knowledgeable other because she's looking to get information rather than getting assistance and exposure. She's not looking for guidance, as in the sense of like person witnessing it. It's more or less like, hey, can you give me information on how this works? Fourth one. A social worker has been working with a 34-year-old female who engaged in services to help improve her anxiety. The woman reported that whenever she would attempt to talk with men, that she'd become speechless and say the first thing that came to her mind, which at times was inappropriate. The client reported that due to the work she has done with the social worker, she has started associating the smell of peppermint to confidence, which classical conditioning phenomenon best explains the change in the woman's behavior. Extinction, acquisition, accommodation, stimulus, generalization. And when you have your response, say coffee in the chat. Coffee in the chat. You're sly. All right, so how does one push past external stressors, especially stressors at work, and how not to bring them home and bring it into your prep? So with that, I would find somebody that you can discuss them with and process that. Meaning, we all do it. I'll bring our stressors home. We bring things that can bring us down, things that unmotivate us, and things like that. But you need to find like a strong support system. People in this chat, even like if you're going through something tough, they are in the same position as you are. So being able to openly say like, hey, this is currently not going well for me, but what are ways that you think I can handle this, or what are different ways that you think I can do it? And yeah, so we're here to support you. But yeah, even if it's beyond us, find something that you can express yourself and make sure your needs are getting met, as well as you're addressing what is currently going on with and for you. So biggest way to separate work and prep. And with that, I'll open up polls. Thought I already did, but it's okay. Mm-mm-mm. Anything else anyone is going through or struggling with? Okay. Okay, let's break it down. So, social worker has been working with a 34-year-old female, engaging services to deal with anxiety whenever she attempted to talk to men, speechless, say things that just came to her mind. Due to the work she's done with the social worker, she started associating the smell of peppermint with confidence. What is most likely? So extinction, when a stimuli loses its association with something. Acquisition, when a behavior begins to become associated with a conditioned stimulus. The linkage of unrelated stimuli to each other. Accommodation, changing one's behavior associated with various stimuli. PJ. Stimulus generalization. So this is when someone begins to associate varying objects of similar categories and experiences the effect from the similar object rather than just from the original conditioning. So from that, it's definitely not extinction, because this is the initiation of the linkage. Definitely not accommodation, since this is asking about classical conditioning rather than Piaget. So then we have to think, are we generalizing this thing to it, such as if I'm having a peppermint in my mouth, or if I'm having chocolate in my mouth, since it's candy, I'll have the same response? Or am I starting to associate a particular conditioned stimulus with exposure to events and such? So with that, it's going to be acquisition, because this is the process of learning and obtaining. So we aren't generalizing it to different objects, we're just associating it with the original. So with that, the next question. A social worker at a family agency has been working with a family and their 7-year-old son. The parents report that their son finds it difficult to complete his schoolwork and oftentimes will be given a bad color for his behavior in the classroom. The parents report that they have begun taking their son's video game system away from him every time his teacher gives them a bad report. What type of behavioral technique best explains the parents' behavior? Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment. And when you have your answer in the chat, type I am powerful in the chat. Opening the polls. Oh, come on, Juliet. You're more powerful than you think. I get it, I got it. Mm-hmm. So take like 10 more seconds. Okay. Let's see what we're looking at here. So we have positive punishment. So let's look at it. Social worker at a family agency has been working with a family on their 7-year-old son. The parents report their son finds it difficult to complete schoolwork. Oftentimes will have bad color. And the parents started taking away the system every time. Bad report. So with that, if we remember, positive reinforcement and punishment are adding something into the situation, and the parents are taking something away. So with that, we would eliminate our positives. So reinforcement is taking away something to promote the behavior, and then punishment is taking away to promote a different behavior. So with that, we need to consider what we're looking at. So positive punishment would be taking away a favorable thing. Negative reinforcement would be taking away something that is undesirable. So based on that, I'm assuming this kid really, really likes this gaming system. So punishment would be taking away something that is desirable. So that would be the correct answer. Any questions or anything along those lines? I get so confused with punishment and reinforcement. So the best way to remember is positive is adding something, negative is taking something away. And if it's a punishment, it's taking away something that they would have enjoyed. Reinforcement would be you're trying to reinforce something, so you take away something negative out of their life. Does that make sense? And if it does, just type yes in the chat. So I know that my mic is picked up on it. And if you have a question, just feel free to type it in or unmute your mic.
Hey, Phil, I do have a question, and it was about this, and I just thought about it because I had it the other day, but I forgot to write it down. So, when children are in school, and I'll give two examples. One is when they have a clip, and if they misbehave, they have to give up that clip.
Mm-hmm.
Which one would that fall under?
Do they like the clip?
Yes, the clip, to have your clip at the end of the week is a good thing.
So to take it away would be a negative punishment. Because remember, right, that negative is taking something away.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then if it's a desirable thing, it's a punishment.
So in the same line of thoughts with children and the behavior charts where you have the red, yellow, and green.
Sure.
Green meaning positive if you're green at the end of the week or green at the end of the day, or yellow or red based on your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same? Is that still considered negative punishment?
So the green would be positive reinforcement because that's something they want.
Okay.
And with with that, it'd be like if you took a green sticker off of the board,
Mm-hmm.
then that would be negative punishment. And with a behavior chart, it's kind of hard to quantify
Gotcha.
negative reinforcement because that's taking away something unfavorable. So I guess if you were able to remove a red sticker off the chart, that would be a negative reinforcement because it'd be taking away something unfavorable to change their behavior around.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Uh-huh. It makes sense.
Okay. I was going to say it's with the behavior chart, it's kind of complex, but yes, I tried my best, honestly, because with that, it's kind of tricky, but I always tell people positive, adding something, negative, taking something away. And reinforcement is where we want the behavior to be quantified. So positive reinforcement, you're putting something good in there. Negative reinforcement, you're taking something bad away to create the situation to be good.
Gotcha.
Punishment, on the other hand, is punishment, So positive punishment is adding something negative in the situation to make the situation good. Swat someone's hide, holler at someone, etc.
Thinking.
Negative punishment is taking something positive away to make the situation negative. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Can you give us an example of a positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement?
Yeah, so positive reinforcement would be if I gave you $1 every time you got a question correct. It's a positive thing that helps it promotes positive things to happen. Like whenever you get a question right, you feel good about yourself. So you want
Right.
you want to keep answering questions correct.
Right.
So let's say negative reinforcement is taking away something undesirable. So let's say every time you get a question wrong, you just start hearing donkey sounds.
I don't know how you get.
You're like, I want these donkey sounds out of here. So you answer a question correct to get the donkey sounds out of the way. So the negative reinforcement is removing something undesirable to promote you to do the behavior again.
So if we had a kid in school and the child was getting a 0 every time he would take a math test or something, would this be negative reinforcement where the kid would get a red on his paper every time he got a 0?
Say that again. Could you say that again?
So let's say we had a kid, right? And every time he took a math test, he got a 0.
Yes.
And it was in red. So he would want to change it into a positive reinforcement, right? I'm a little confused with the negative.
Okay. So it is removing a negative situation, meaning if I wanted the negative thing to stop, I do the positive behavior.
So the kid would want to study more.
Yes.
Okay.
Or let's say I smoke cigarettes, and every time I smoke cigarettes, I have a heavy cough. In order to eliminate something I don't like, which is the heavy cough, I will stop smoking. It'll promote me to be smoke-free.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. So negative negative reinforcement is so difficult because it's hard to imagine what an undesirable situation is.
So is it sort of like when you're sitting in the car with the seatbelt, like you said?
Yeah.
If you want the seatbelt, the dinging to stop or the sound to stop, you put your seatbelt on.
Yes.
That's negative reinforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Because I want the sound to stop, so I do something positive to make it stop.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
And negative punishment is like a spanking.
No, that's positive punishment.
Positive punishment.
So negative, because remember, a spanking would be adding something into the situation. So positive is always adding something into the situation. Negative is always stripping something away. Negative reinforcement is stripping something undesirable out of the situation. Negative punishment is stripping something desirable out of the situation.
Okay. See, we went right from classical conditioning and the other conditioning to positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, all this. And I got confused. I was like, okay, wait, I'm confused.
So this reinforcement is operant conditioning.
Okay, because I was like, that has to connect some kind of way.
Yeah, so these reinforcements make the person, quote unquote, operate how they should be operating.
So the negative reinforcement and the negative punishment can coincide with operant conditioning?
Yes.
Does positive reinforcement and positive punishment correlate
Yeah.
with classical conditioning?
Nope. All of this is operant.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So does everyone have a grip on this or no?
Yeah, I'm suggesting in the week, maybe we get some of these questions.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So it is safe to say that the reinforcements or the behavior, because this is all of this positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, negative punishment, it correlates with behaviors, right? Like behavior theories and things of that nature.
Yes.
Okay, and that is all under operant conditioning.
Yes. Behavior modification
Behavior modification is the word I was looking for. Okay.
Is borrows from operant conditioning because operant conditioning changes behavior through reinforcement.
Okay. See how you make it connect? That's what I'm saying. That's what I need. The way
I was gonna say,
like
as you guys talk, I can grab the concepts you guys are trying to lean on, like object permanence and object consistency. But but it's like at the moment I had to warm the brain up. So any other questions before I stop the recording?
No, not for me.
Can you put a little extra? Okay. So I'm gonna stop the recording, and